What's up, guys? You want to be alpha? You want to be masculine in a healthy way? You want to be a badass husband, father, and friend? Listen to this episode where we talk about the 11 things you should focus on to be an alpha male. Also, we're going to give away a free workout program, MAPS Anabolic, the most alpha of all of the MAPS programs. We're going to give it away for free. Here's how you can win that program. Leave a comment below in the first 24 hours. Talk about masculinity. Talk about what you think it means to be an alpha male. Put it in the comments. If we pick your comment as the best one, we'll notify you, and you'll get free access to MAPS Anabolic. But you also have to subscribe to this channel and click on notifications. Turn that on. One more thing before we start the podcast. 2 great strength building programs are on sale right now. MAPS Strong, MAPS Powerlift, 50% off. Go check them out and go sign up at mapsfitnessproducts.com. Just use the code August Special with no space for that discount. All right, enjoy the show.
Good time to reveal the alpha male.
Why'd you say it like that?
I feel like we have to come out with the episode like that today.
That's how people think.
The alpha male.
Yeah. You know what? All joking aside, there definitely is, and there has been for a while, a crisis of masculinity, and it's evidenced by all of the children that are raised without fathers. This is a big deal. It's a big problem.
Did you see that, Jordan?
It's been under attack, for quite some time now. It's all over the place.
Yeah. Did you see that Jordan Peterson just had Warren Farrell?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was over 2. It was over 2 years when we had him on there. It was not a popular conversation back then.
No, but there's obviously a lot of truth in that. And what they attribute to toxic masculinity, the traits, right, of being violent and aggressive and treating women terribly, that comes from oftentimes, because if you look at the statistics on men that do that kind of stuff, right, that go to jail, that are dysfunctional, that treat people that way, the vast majority of them were raised without a good, solid, strong male role model. And so what you're left with, and here's my theory, what you're left with is when you're a young man and you don't have this male role model, is you create what you think masculinity is. And where do you get your information from? Movies, TV, media, rap music, rock music, whatever. And so you think, being a guy means being this aggressive asshole and treating women terribly and, not taking responsibility and living my life the way, whatever. And that's so false. That's so wrong. It's the opposite of what real masculinity is.
Well, let's define what makes an alpha male. It's going to be a fun episode to break down all the things that we think that define a true alpha male, not this image so much that you see.
Not this engineered alpha male that you'll see like on Instagram or whatever else.
Yeah, for me at least, the best example I have of that is my own father. He was a great role model. Obviously not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But he showed, he respected my mom, showed her lots of respect and love. He respected his father and his mother and the people in our family that were older than him. I mean, to this day, if my dad is sitting in a particular chair and my grandfather walks in, or one of my older uncles, or, one of my cousins walks in who's pregnant, my dad will get up and offer his chair and show lots of respect. My dad was definitely not someone you want to mess with. He definitely was very confident and he could kick your ass. I mean, he was a judo practitioner, a very strong guy, but he also showed lots of restraint, calmness. He was very steady and stable. I remember one time there was a situation where he did get physical with somebody, and he restrained the person he could have totally really hurt the person, but instead he held the person down and showed lots of restraint. And that had a huge impact on me as a kid, because I could see that my dad was, he was controlling himself. He was showing temperance.
Well, I think that's a lot of what defines a true alpha male is having these certain capabilities, but then refraining or knowing when to use them and when to not use them. Right.
Totally.
So but for me, I really wanted to do this episode because I didn't have that. I didn't have a good example growing up. You know, those that have been listening to the show for a long time know that my father passed when I was 7. My mom married into a very unhealthy relationship after that. So I really had to piece this together as I got older into adult. And I think a lot of where I picked up on, you know, what defines or makes it an alpha male was in my pursuit of leadership, is reading and learning about what makes a good leader. Because you'll see as we go through, like, you know, yesterday we wrote down all these lists. We all started firing off all these different things that we thought make an alpha male. And one of the things that I found that the common theme throughout all this, no matter whether it was Justin or you or me making a point, a lot of it aligns with what also makes a great leader. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stuff that I picked up over years was from reading things along those lines.
You found mentors. You found a lot of mentors. You found them in business too, didn't you?
I did a little bit in business. I'd say a lot of the mentors that came in books. You know, that was a lot of the stuff that I think I aspired to be like. There wasn't a lot of great role models, even in business. Like I didn't have the best leaders in our companies that we worked. There was some, but I was also stuck in a position where I didn't think that the men that were above me and so they weren't people that I aspired to be like. I found a lot of that stuff through reading more than I did in examples in real life.
Yeah, for me again, it's just watching my dad, watching my grandfather, the respect that they showed the women in the family, the respect that they showed their elders, the consistency that they showed. My dad is very consistent, very strong in his position, and it was great. It was great to have somebody like that, to look at and to watch. And you mentioned being a great leader. I think that's important. I think it's also important to know when to follow, which I think is a good characteristic of a good leader, right? It's being able to know and to be humble enough to say, I can learn from this other person and I don't need to, assert my dominance constantly. That's a big one that you see in false masculinity or fake alphaness, is this guy that asserts his dominance all the time. When they do studies on primates, the primates that like chimpanzees and gorillas, and by the way, they're way more violent than humans are, right? But still, the leaders are not the ones that fight everybody. They're the ones that could, if they wanted to, but do the most for other people in their group and tribe, and so they have that respect. Yeah. Because the ones that are hated and feared, as soon as they turn their back, a group of monkeys gets together and then will jump them and attack them and kill them. And you've seen this in history, right? With tyrants, where they'll before you know it, they get poisoned or killed, and because they lead through fear and intimidation.
Well, let's go down this list, the ones, and we can briefly talk about maybe what we mean by this, because some of them are obvious and some of them are not so obvious.
Actually, I wanted to ask Justin. You've mentioned in the past you've had great coaches in the past that showed you this. When did this first happen? Like, when did you first have a coach where you had that example?
One of the first examples was my football coach, and a lot of times it was just about doing the right thing. And that was in all of your actions, whether or not you were on the field or you're on campus, and just the realization that everybody's watching you, and what makes up who you are as your character is what you always do. So he would bring up examples of like when we would, some guys would hawk loogies and spit in the halls, or talk down to somebody else and intimidate them. And he would jump all over those guys and correct that. And it was just one of those things where every little detail was something that we tried to aspire every time to get better at. And so it was very much of a growth mindset that he was implementing with us, but it was very impactful on me, because just the integrity that he showed us was something that between him and my father as well, I got really good examples of integrity and always staying true to doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's great. The first one that came up for us when we were writing this list.
Which, by the way, is in no particular order.
No, but this one was like popped up for us, which which kind of says a little bit about it, which is because I think young men, at least especially kids, I know I thought that being a man meant never being afraid, right? Like, oh, you're fearless, but that is not true at all. And I remember I had a client once that I trained that was he was on the SWAT team in San Jose, and we actually talked about this. And I said, "Aren't you like when you go and you do these raids or you're in the situations like do you still get afraid?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." He's like, "I could lose my life at any moment," and he said, "But you just go, you do it anyway." And I remember that being such a powerful thing to hear. And then there was a conversation I had with my son when he was little, where he said, "Oh, he was scared of the dark," and he said, "Papa, I wish I was not afraid like you, because then I could be brave." And I said, "You can't be brave unless you're afraid."
That's right.
Like Superman running into a burning building, he's not brave. He knows nothing's going to happen to him. A firefighter who could die from the flames, that's bravery right there. So I think it's important to note that being alpha male, you're going to feel fear, but you do what you need to do anyway. You embrace it. I'm scared, but I'm not going to.
True courage is going into fear.
That's right.
And acknowledging that you're afraid, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I learned in reading some of the leadership books, was that when you have these situations where you feel fear, is instead of running from it or trying to avoid it or looking for another way around, is to go through that. And I think that's just a definition of what makes an alpha male or a leader, is the ability to accept, embrace that this is scary, this is going to be difficult. There's a good chance I might fail. I won't make it through, whatever. But yet you still move forward towards it.
Yeah, there's a couple examples I can think of just with you guys that I watched this. And by the way, I think it's important to surround yourself with other men who exemplify some of these things, because you do learn and pick up on them. But like Justin, for example, a lot of people don't know this. When we started the podcast, he was probably the least comfortable person, being on a podcast, being on camera, doing that kind of stuff. It's kind of against his nature. He never once faltered, always did it, never said anything, never complained, never tried to make it so that it was different, always put himself out there. And I thought that was a great example of kind of what we're talking about. And then with you, Adam, because of how you grew up, I have to imagine you probably had some fear of even having your own kids because of what you experienced, and yet you had your own kid, and you're a great father.
Sure.
So two great examples that I can think of being afraid but doing it anyway and moving forward. And I think that's really awesome.
The other thing that comes to mind is speaking your truth, right? Speaking the truth, I should say. Not, your truth, but the truth. And I think that sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes it's scary to tell somebody exactly how you feel or what you're thinking. And I remember the first time that I learned about radical honesty, and that always stuck with me. In fact, it's one of our core values in this business. And I learned like years ago that the more honest, the more radical honesty that I could put forth, or the way I could speak the truth to people, even if it hurt, even if it was difficult, it always ended up working out for the better, even if it was difficult to go through it originally and say it. And it's a practice that I think that you're always evolving or trying to be better at. I don't know if anyone is ever perfect at never telling themselves a white lie or being 100% truthful, but to be pursuing that truth all the time, I think, is what defines an alpha male.
Speaking the truth is especially important when it's unpopular to speak the truth, or when it's scary to speak the truth. A lot of people don't. This is, throughout all of history,
that's when it's most important.
Most important. Do you know how many travesties could have been stopped if people were just continued to always speak the truth, even when being intimidated or even when violence was put against them? You think of pre-World War II Germany and the Nazis, right? And everybody's like, oh my gosh, how could so many of them go along with what was happening? A lot of them are afraid. The same thing with, the Soviet Union, or, when Mao took over with China, people they would be thrown in gulags or prisons or killed for speaking the truth. So people were so intimidated that they would just say what they were supposed to say, which allowed terrible things to happen. So especially when you're afraid, and I know that's easy said, right? Easier said than done, but especially when you're afraid to speak the truth, this is why one of the most valuable, without going off on a tangent, one of the most valuable freedoms we have is the freedom of speech. It explicitly exists to protect unpopular speech, because popular speech does not require any protection. So very important. And this is definitely part of number one, which is to be brave, right? Is to say, okay, well, I know I'm in a room full of people who are going to chastise me, but 1 + 1 is 2. Like, that's the truth, and so I'm going to speak it, and I'm going to speak it often.
Stepping out in a crowd and standing your ground is a very, very hard thing to do. And that's just something that, especially if what's right and what's true, that's your opportunity. It's getting tested, but very difficult to do that. But that's, in my opinion, that is a definition of an alpha male.
Totally. The next one I think is really important, just to be a good person, which is to always strive to be better than you were. You know what I mean? To improve upon how you were yesterday, which I think is the only fair comparison, by the way. I think it's not fair to compare yourself to other people. Everybody's different. But I do think it's fair to compare yourself to yourself, and like with fitness, for example, I'll have people who will be like, oh man, I would train clients or work with people, and they'd say things like, oh, I'm so inactive. And I'll say, well, how many days did you work out last week? Oh, I only worked out twice. Well, how many days a week did you work out 3 weeks ago? 0. Like, you're doing a great job. Yeah. Like, you're improving. And that's really, and if you improve a little bit every day, man, that makes tremendous differences in the long haul.
I feel this is kind of like the embracing the fear too. It's kind of like embracing your flaws and recognizing your weaknesses and recognizing that you have places to grow and being okay with that. Embracing that I know there's a better version of me out there tomorrow if I continue to pursue that, and to accept and be okay with your weaknesses, your flaws, your setbacks in the pursuit of always trying to be a better version of yourself. And I think accepting that, owning that, and pursuing that is so important. And I'm going to keep tying back to leadership, because to me, that's my connection that I've made with this in my life, is being able to see that, okay, this is what makes a good leader, is not necessarily having all the answers or being so great, but the pursuit of consistent growth.
Yeah. Do you guys have any strategies for this, for yourself, to help yourself with? Because this requires a little bit of like self-reflection and self-awareness, right? Because like, you don't know what you don't know type of deal. One thing that I do is I try to surround myself with people who are better than I am at something that I want to improve upon, right? So if I want to get better at public speaking, I'll find people, either follow them on social media or watch them, learn from them, or if someone's better than me at, whatever, like to have myself around people like that, I can't help but, improve myself, because I have that context, right? That person next to me who as opposed to always surrounding yourself with people that you feel like you're better than, or that you don't learn from, which might make your ego feel good. Like, oh, I'm the best. How the hell are you going to learn, from something like that?
Yeah. And definitely surrounding yourself with people that you aspire to be like in certain areas you recognize that you could improve. Also just immersing yourself in an environment that is completely uncomfortable. And sort of working your way through that and starting at the bottom all over again provides a great opportunity for growth. It is very challenging to do that. And it's something I've had over the years to get better at challenging myself to do, because being comfortable, it's way easier. It's something that more naturally you want to gravitate towards, making your life a bit easier. But every time I decide to really immerse myself in a direction where I know I'm going to be struggling the whole time. The other side of that is just so much more fulfilling.
Well, I think a lot of that is challenging your own beliefs, right? Not smelling your own farts all the time. Like I used to do this, and this practice is something I did for years.
Smell like cheese.
I used to do at the end of every night. I'd lay in bed and I'd think about like all the different state changes that I had throughout the day, positive and negative. But I was most interested in the things that negatively impacted me, things that made me angry or upset or frustrated if I got in an argument with somebody. And then I'd dive into that situation. And instantly the first thing that I would do is to remove the other person from this, meaning that no matter if it was Sal who said something that was, let's say, insulting to me, and right away I would go, well, forget Sal and exactly what he said.
So take that person out of the focus.
Yeah, that person is not what I'm looking. I'm pursuing self-awareness and growth with myself right now, and he affected me somehow emotionally. I gave up some of that power. So what is it about what he said that made me feel this way? And many times what you'll find, it is a reflection of some deeper rooted insecurity that you have. Like, it had nothing really to do with the insult that Sal said. It's that I identify with that insult somewhat because I allowed it to emotionally affect me negatively.
Otherwise, it wouldn't bother you.
That's right.
Yeah, like if I'm like, Adam, you're short. Like, that's not going to bother you because you know you're tall.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what is it about that made me feel this way? And that's where the real work is done in self-improvement and growth. And the first step to that is becoming self-aware of those moments. And it started as a evening practice that I would do all the time. And just like anything else, if you practice that a lot and you get really good at it, you can start to do it in real time. So instead of the next time,
because you're practicing it.
Because I've practiced that so much at nighttime, like reflecting on my day. Now in real time, when say another person I meet says the same insult that Sal said, immediately I can feel the change in emotion and the feelings that are going on internally right away. And instead of reacting to what he's saying, I have the ability to internally go like, oh, wow, that stings. That's that thing that I'm still dealing with that goes all the way back to childhood that I'm still working through and trying to get better. And the more you practice that, the more you can get real time with it and not allow those situations to affect your day.
I like that. I remember you saying that a while ago, and I started doing that. I thought that was really valuable. You know, another thing that I did, and I do that, I do it sometimes still, but I used to do it real often, was if I had a very strong opinion about a subject, I would find people who had an opposing opinion, who were smart and intelligent and can present their case well, and then I would debate them. But the goal for me wasn't to beat them in a debate. The goal was to see if I could, understand their point. And I would do a good job of presenting my case. And usually I would come out and I would say, okay, well, I still stand by my position. But every once in a while, I would have my mind changed, which was a great feeling. My ego at first wasn't like that, right? You don't want to lose a debate. But afterwards, I would kind of like it and be like, wow, I'm not wrong anymore. I have a better position because this person, engaged with me. You could do this actually quite well on social media. Just got to be respectful, because otherwise it turns into a shouting match, and it becomes really annoying. This next one I think is really important because we live in kind of this time where if we do something good or do something right, I guess it doesn't count if nobody sees you do it. So really it's doing what's right because it's right. Bottom line, that's it. There's nothing else. There's this old marketing saying that says something like, donate $10,000 to the needy and then spend $100,000 in marketing, letting everybody know that you did that, right? Yeah. That's the opposite of what I'm talking about. It's like, do the right thing just because that's the right thing to do. It's not because it's expedient, not because you fear the consequences. Here's another one, right? Like the man who doesn't rob a bank because they're afraid of going to jail, that's not a good person. That's just a coward, right? They're just scared of going to jail. The man who doesn't rob a bank because, that's the wrong thing to do. Like, you ever play that game? Like, what would you do if you could never get caught, right? Yeah. it's like, you know, do you do the right thing because it's the right thing, or because you're afraid of, you know, getting caught or the negative consequences? Big difference.
Well, this one reminds me actually a story about you, Sal, in this business. There was a time, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and we were talking about the business and just how things have unfolded. And you know, many times we say how it's been so serendipitous how that unfolded in the business. And there's been many times where there's an opportunity for us to make more money in this direction or that direction. And I remember you saying, Sal, that, you know, one of the things I know for sure is every time we do the right thing, we've been rewarded in the business, even if it's not the most financially beneficial or the one that we would like to do the most. When it's the right thing to do, we're always rewarded within the business. And sometimes that can be deceiving because you think, okay, well, part of the goal of a business is to scale and to make more money. Yeah. And so this option over here seems like this would be more money. But if our integrity says that I don't feel right selling this, or I don't feel right charging people for this, then even if there is a lot of money there, maybe this isn't the right thing for us to do. And I feel like we've had that conversation many times in this business, and I believe that we've been rewarded and it's served us by doing the right thing, and not always the most expedient or the most financially beneficial for us, because we didn't feel that it aligned with our values and our integrity. And I believe that that's how this works for people in life. Is there's times in life where you'll have these options, and sometimes the ones that look the most tempting, or you would think might give you instant pleasure or gratification, isn't necessarily the right thing for you to do. And so making sure that those things align with your core values and having integrity around it, and doing the right thing for the sake of the right thing.
Yeah, I like that. Well, go ahead, Justin.
Oh, doing the right thing. It builds that pathway to a fruitful life. And eventually it sort of unveils itself to you, and it's not always the easy. It doesn't seem like things are always working out smoothly, but it's something that has more purpose, has more. You start to see, what that all can become later on, and we've definitely been tried and tempted along the way. And to Adam's point, there's been many opportunities thrown, and we've had discussions and hard discussions, even when we're tired and we don't want to travel places. I remember Sal challenging us, like, maybe we should go to that, that appointment because we said we would. And that's integrity. And it's not easy because, there's plenty of other things that we could easily do to make money and keep going. But it's a character thing. It's who we are. And so the closer we stay true to that, the more of these things will present themselves later on.
Yeah, I've heard it presented like this. I think this is a brilliant way too, is that if you look at every decision you make and every potential consequence of that decision, and then all the downstream consequences, right? It's like that, what's that saying? Like a butterfly flaps its wings and then across the world, there's a car crash or something. Like there's this chain of events that can happen from single decisions, right? And there's like this infinite possibility of consequences and actions from one decision or one action. So you have to imagine that being honest and making the right decision, doing the right thing, leads to a greater potential of better consequences. It's not going to guarantee everything,
right?
But it's going to probably lead to a better potential of effects and consequences, and they're not always obvious. Sometimes, in fact, it seems the opposite of obvious, where you're presented, an opportunity and you're like, man, that's easy money, or no one will ever find out, or what's the big deal, but you got to just do the right thing. My mom used to, when I was a kid, my mom was so honest, it used to annoy me because she would refuse to call the school and say if I was sick in order for me to get a day off, or she would, she was so honest. I'll never forget one time we left the grocery store and the cashier gave her too much change. I think it was like less than $1, and we were in the car and my mom's looking at her. we got to go back inside. Why? They gave me too much change. I'm like, Mom, who cares? What's the big deal? It's like, no, we got to go back inside. She goes all the way back. But it was such a great example of like doing the right thing, you know, even though it's not expedient. And of course, I learned a lot from that. This next one is super important. It's very empowering, but it feels like it's not. It actually feels like it takes away from you, or it'll damage you. And that's to take responsibility, take personal responsibility. Now, I'm not talking about taking personal responsibility for good things. That's a piece of cake, right? So, you know, oh, wow, look, you deadlifted 500 pounds. You know, yeah, it's because I worked out hard. No, I'm not talking about that responsibility. I'm talking about taking personal responsibility for all the shit that goes wrong, all the bad stuff. You know, everything in your life that isn't the way it is, find a way to take some responsibility of it, you know, whether it's because you decided to be in the room when the thing happened, or you decided to not leave the partner who was shitty to you, or you decided to turn your face the other way while somebody did something wrong, or it was more obvious and you actually did something. Take the responsibility, because that's the first step to becoming a better person. If you don't take responsibility, then you have no control. How the hell can you change or improve upon anything? And this, I think, is sorely lacking in today's society. Sorely lacking.
I love this one too. This also reminds me of the first rule of leadership. And the first rule,
it's all your fault.
That's it. First rule of leadership,
everything's your fault.
Is everything is your fault. And it's such a, it is a very challenging thing to, I mean, it's easy to say, but to really, to look at everything that goes wrong within your business or your household or your life, even though you're being affected by outside forces and other human beings, to have the ability to separate from all of those outside forces and take full ownership of, you know, what role. This is one of my favorite attributes about my wife. Like, one of the most attractive qualities about Katrina is not that we never disagree or argue or get into it, is that the minute that we do, we have this ability to kind of separate and instantly remove the other person, and to think, what part of that, I don't care if it was something I totally fucked up and did wrong and was way out of line or whatever. She will still remove herself from that and look at what part of that situation does she own? What part did I allow that to even happen to me? Even if Adam did this to me or said this, or I was the one with the mistake in the situation, she'll still look at what she owns. And because of that, the communication when we get back together to have a conversation around whatever the situation may be, it's always starts off with owning what that person had to do with it and apologizing for it. Mm-hmm. So even if I did something bad, we separate, we go different directions, we get back together, the way she starts the conversation is always apologizing for her role in it, you know, where she could have been a better partner or been better to not have allowed this to happen. And so such a valuable trait to be pursuing is that extreme ownership in everything that happens to you in your life, that you have ownership of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's just so many uncontrollable factors that come your way in life. And the one thing that you really can control is how you decide to deal with it. Yes. The decisions you make, which then can affect the direction that you're going to be able to steer it. And, you know, most of the stress and anxiety and all these things that people are experiencing, they're taking on too many of those uncontrollable factors. And you know, and that's overwhelming. And it seems as though, you know, so many things are coming, you know, at them and against them, when in fact, if you can really kind of rein that in and just start focusing on those tangible things that you can control, it's amazing what starts to kind of unfold, and this sort of answer presents itself to you. But it really takes that self-reflection and time to assess how you personally are facing this and what you're doing as a result of that.
No, it's such a good point. You know, there's definitely things that'll happen in your life that you have no control over, right? Somebody cuts you off, or you lose your job because something happens with the company. But you can definitely take responsibility for how you react and where you go from there. You know, like, oh man, this terrible thing happened to me. Okay, now what? Now it's my choice. And it might not feel like it because it might feel so overwhelming, but you still have that choice. And it's hard because now you're responsible for your decisions. And a lot of times people don't want to, if they live in a shitty situation, they've had bad stuff, nobody wants to sit back and say, yeah, a lot of that is I could have definitely acted different. It's easier to be like, oh, I had no control. This is, this is totally not my fault. But there's a role that you played, even if it's just how you reacted, or even if it's just you not getting out of the way.
Or how prepared you were or were not for that situation.
Right.
Many times that's what that conversation looks like for myself. Say that an uncontrollable situation happens and it fucks me, puts me in a shitty predicament. The conversation I'm having with myself is I was not prepared for the worst outcome. I should have been.
How do I avoid it or do better next time?
This is a shitty situation. This hurts. This is hard. This is difficult. This is going to be a hell of a time the next 6 months for me. And part of why it's going to be such a hell of a time was because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't either mentally prepared. I wasn't physically prepared. I wasn't ready for something like this to potentially hit me. And that's my own fault.
Yes.
I can't control that person doing it to me. I can't control the company dissolving, like you said, but I most certainly could have been prepared for if that is to happen. I already have a plan B in place because I was prepared for it, so that when it did happen, it didn't scare me, it didn't hurt me that bad. And that is something that you can always take ownership of even if it's something that you can't control, you can always control you being prepared for those worse outcomes. And that's the learning lesson in something like that, is like, hey, I can't control it, but the next time I'm going to make sure that I'm in a situation where I'm prepared for that.
Totally. This next one I think is real important. I think sometimes, and people get this confused. This next one's very important, and it is very important for a man in particular because you are often the one in your family, that you're the one that your wife or girlfriend,
The protector.
looks to be a protector, and that is to be strong and dangerous. Now, it doesn't mean, I don't mean be dangerous in the sense that you're like, you fly off the chain, you're going to kill people. That's not what I mean. I mean, don't be weak. Okay. I mean, be solid in who you are. So, and you don't have to necessarily be super physically tough or be a black belt in martial arts, although that helps because it gives you more of that confidence. But rather, don't be a weak person, because weak people bend with the wind and with the whims of people around them. They're not stable. They're not strong in their position, and they get taken advantage of because they're easy targets. I have a personal experience with this as a kid. I went to a junior high. It was a rough junior high. It wasn't great. And it was lots of gangs. There were lots of gangs in my school. It was the first time I ever got exposed to anything like this. And these gangs would, and real gangs, like a lot of them went to juvenile hall and jail later on. And these guys would walk around and they would terrorize kids. Like, you got in their way, they pushed you. And there was a lot of them, so they would intimidate people, or they would knock the shit out of your hands, or they'd take your food or whatever, and nobody ever said anything. And I remember I was in, this happened to me. I was in line to get water at the water fountain, and one of the dudes just cuts right in front of me. And I sat there for like 4 seconds, and I'm like, okay, do I let this happen? I mean, he's got all his buddies over there, or do I not let this happen? And I thought to myself, I don't want to walk around with that this guy or these people are going to think that they could do that to me. And so I said something. Now, I ended up getting jumped twice, ended up getting in a fight with this guy twice, and then they left me alone. They totally left me alone. Why? Because I was too big of a pain in the ass to bother, because I was the guy that was going to bite back. And that means you have to deal with that every single time. And so they avoided me. And nobody ever bothered me as a result of this. And that's what this means, is to be that. Like, you're still a peaceful person. You're calm. You're not this overly aggressive asshole. But people should know that there's that threat, that you're not going to just sit there and get folded in half. No, if you push me, I'm going to push you back.
Well,
that's strength. You have to stand for something. Stand for something or you'll fall.
For anything.
And for anything. And that's just it. It's not about, puffing your chest up and pushing people around. No, this is just about knowing that this is my value system. And when you test my value system, it's not going to go easy for you.
Yeah.
Well, weak people love to bully other weak people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they look for that. They're not looking for someone who's going to, even if they beat you up or they won that fight, it's too much work. They're not looking for somebody who's going to stand up for themselves. I mean, you alluded to one of the other important parts, I think, of being strong and dangerous. Is being strong and dangerous also leads to confidence. And I think confidence is one of the most important attributes to having these physical attributes. When you are strong, you're capable, and you are dangerous, you walk around and you carry yourself with so much more confidence. And I think, being a true alpha, that you have to have that confidence that you're not afraid to go somewhere with your wife and kid in fear of somebody, taking something from you or hurting them. As long as they're here with me, I feel confident that someone's going to have a hell of a time getting to them because they're going to have to go through me. And I think being strong and dangerous only exemplifies that ability to be confident and your capabilities of what you can do.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people they confuse this too with being like big and tough and strong. No, I know people. I knew guys that were big dudes that just got pushed around by friends, pushed around by other people, and I knew guys that were little dudes that people knew, like, okay, like he's a nice guy, he's cool. But don't try to take advantage of him or don't try to push him around because he's going to stand his ground. That's basically what it means, is that you have teeth behind your lips, and that threat is what's important. And people respect that, but it's not being violent and aggressive. It's not that at all. It's that calm. When I used to do jiu-jitsu, there were MMA guys that I would, train with sometimes. And I remember going with one of my buddies to a bar, and this guy he was a top middleweight contender. I mean, he could easily kick the crap out of everybody in the bar. And this drunk guy was picking on, trying to pick a fight with him. And I remember him being super confident and standing, but didn't do anything because he knew he could hurt the guy. Didn't do anything. We went outside. Anyway, the guy took a swing at him, and he just put him to sleep. He choked him, put him to sleep, put him down, and didn't hurt him or anything. But, that's kind of an example of, what I'm talking about. This next one is also very important. We talk about this all the time in the context of health and fitness, and that is to take care of yourself like someone you care about. I think it's important to say it that way because, especially if you're a dad, you'll know what I'm talking about. You will often make better decisions for your children because you love them, you take care of them. You wouldn't hand your kid a cigarette. You wouldn't make your kid eat super terribly or do things to hurt themselves or whatever because you care about them so much. But yet sometimes with ourselves, we treat ourselves so terribly, like we don't care about ourselves.
Well, if you're going to be a provider and a protector, and that's part of being an alpha male, you've also got to be able to, if you're going to take care of other people, you have to first be able to take care of yourself. So I think that's a given in this situation. If I'm going to be able to take care of, protect, and provide for my family, I damn well be able to do it for myself first if I'm going to be able to go prove that I can go do it for multiple people. Or in a situation where you're in leadership and you're leading a team of people, I better be able to at least take care of myself before I think I'm going to take on the responsibility of others and taking care of them.
Yeah, the healthy, fit version, and I say healthy in the fullest sense, psychologically, mentally, financially, like you're just healthy, right? That version of you is going to best take care of the people in your life that will need you, right? So if you're healthy and you're fit and you're taking care of yourself mentally, like how much better of a partner and a father and a friend will you be? So it's very important to take care of yourself. And if you have a challenge with this, inject somebody into this that you actually care about. So if you're like, I don't know how to do that for myself, think of someone in your life that you care about and then say, would I want that person to do what I'm about to do right now? And if the answer is no, then treat yourself like you would treat, that person that you care about.
Now the next one, Doug wanted us to start with, and seeing how the episode has unfolded and how things that we've talked about, it makes a lot of sense because having core values and defining your purpose, a lot of these other things kind of follow naturally, right? Like it helps make these decisions on what, we talked about doing the right thing. What's the right thing if you don't have core values and principles, right? So having that integrity, defining the things that are important to you, the things that you value, and then the purpose in your life will then really help a lot of these other things when you're questioned with, okay, well, what is the right thing, or what am I supposed to do right now? If you've defined what those core principles are, it makes a lot of those other decisions easier. Then it's just about sticking to those things, which is, this is something they teach you in business for scaling a company. It's so important to have these core values, because then the rest of your decisions that you make, you can always refer back to that. We have this idea, we might go this way, we might go that way. I'm not sure. One guy says this, one guy says that. Okay, well, let's refer back to our core values of why we started this company and what it means to us. And of those two directions, we're deciding which one of them aligns with our core values the most, and there's our answer on the direction. And that's so much like leading your life.
Yeah, because when you can evaluate it like that, you always are able to come back to true north, to the direction that you want to go. And I've always looked at it like living by a code. And you've seen this examples of this with religion, or like Stoicism, or other forms of being able to figure out what your sort of core values are, and your morals, and things like that, and things that you won't ever compromise. And I think it's important to actually define those things for yourself individually, so you can now go through that decision-making process a lot easier, because if it conflicts at all, there's your answer. And it's not easy, because a lot of times that's one of those things where you really want to pursue a certain direction, but at least then if you're going against your core values.
Yeah, if you're not a principled person and you don't have these values defined for yourself, you are a prime target to be manipulated by marketers.
There's predators out there.
Yes, you'll get manipulated by people marketing shit to you, by politicians. You'll get manipulated by bad people in your life. You will be a piece of clay that gets molded and shaped into whatever the hell is happening at that moment if you are not a principled, valued individual. Now, you are a principled, valued individual. The whole world could change around you, but you are the same. And this is important because the world sometimes changes for the better. Sometimes things happen and they're not necessarily the better. And so you need to have those values to remain true to, who you are, which takes us to the next one, which is to have integrity. Like, do what you say you're going to do, which there's another part to this, which is to be careful with what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, don't say you're going to do something unless you know you're going to do something. And this is very important, because if you're that person that has that reputation, like all you guys, right? I know if you guys say you're going to do something, with me, you've built that reputation. I know you're going to do it. There's no doubt in my mind. In fact, it's so strong that shit could go wrong, and the last person that I'll think, did something wrong or made a bad decision would be you guys, because I'm like, well, no, that's not who Adam is, or that's not who Justin is. I know that person, and I know they do what they say, so there must be more to the story. That's who you want to be. You want to be that person.
This is actually one of the biggest mistakes I see aspiring entrepreneurs. Like if I'm mentoring somebody and they're talking about, I want to build something similar to Mind Pump, and then, I want to gain this following on social media, and then I have this business idea. And I said the number one mistake that I see people do on social media is to put something out there and then to not follow through and execute on it. It is the absolute. If you are trying to,
that's a business killer, man.
You're back to the leadership thing, right? If you are building a following of people, you essentially are trying to lead, right? You're leading this following of people, however you draw it up. And if you say something and you don't execute and you don't follow through, how many people are going to continue to follow you anywhere? So be very careful of what you commit to or what you say, because that your word is your bond. And if you get known really quickly as the guy who says that he's going to do something and then it doesn't follow through, good luck. Good luck building a business. Good luck having a bunch of people trust that your product or your thing is going to have value or add value to their life, because you're the guy who just says shit, does it for a while, then it gets hard, and then you quit doing it. So be careful of what you put out there and what you say. I'm very cautious of that. We were just recording another episode, and I was alluding to, potentially even moving my training regimen in a certain direction, and I don't even want to say it publicly because I
You're not sure yet.
That's right, because I know that I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, and so I'm not going to just put it out there and then people go, "Hey, I thought you said you were going to do this or you're going to do that." Like, I'm very careful that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
And to that point too, like there's just something that I've tried to kind of challenge myself with in terms of being able to maintain that. And for me, it's to be slow to decisions and also to be slow to anger. Those two things have always been a better option for me than to impulsively react. And that's something that has gotten me, and I've gotten better over the years, because I used to be a lot more emotionally driven and charged, and have, made decisions based on what I felt was right, but was really emotionally charged, and reacted to them. And later on finding out that was the wrong decision for me. So to be able to be in a calm state, and to be able to rationally think my way through it has always been a better option.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because then it's hard to have integrity, right? Because if you react strong emotionally, like, screw you guys, I quit. I'm pissed off, right? And then I leave, and then like 5 hours later, I'm like, oh man.
Now you got to kind of backpedal. Oh no,
what the hell did I do?
Really mean that?
Or you get mad at your kid. That's it. You're grounded for a month, and then 5 hours later, like, well, shit. Now they're going to be grounded for a month. Like, that might have been an overreaction. So it's very important what you said, because it makes having integrity a lot easier. Because otherwise, you say shit that's hard to back up afterwards. Yeah. This next one is also very important. I actually learned this quite a bit being a trainer and managing gyms, and that was to be likable, to be humble, and to learn to follow. But let's start with being likable. This is important. I don't mean this in a fake way, by the way. What's that one saying? Like, if in order to if you want to attract good friends, you have to be a good friend, right? This is what I mean by being likable. It makes life a lot easier. We're social creatures, and people who are unlikable just have a tougher time with everything, and it's very unhealthy. Bad relationships are as bad for your health as, I think the last study I read was like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So likable isn't necessarily agreeable, by the way. Agreeable just means agreeing with people because you're afraid to rub them the wrong way or disagree with them. No. You can still be strong in your principles, but you could be polite, respectful. In fact, being true to who you are is the utmost respect. It's showing the other person that you respect them enough to be honest with them. But you want to be the person that people respect and like. It's not a great thing to be unliked by lots of people. I'm
reading the book Good to Great again.
Yeah, I've read that book. So good.
And this is the actual defining characteristics of what makes a level 5 leader, is that to be likable and to be humble. And it's actually it's more rare than you would think. There's a lot of great level 4 leaders out there, but a lot of leaders still want the accolades and to be praised for everything that they're doing. And humility is so important, such an important characteristic of being that level 5 leader, is to be the person who's willing to lead the charge, to go out there, to face the fire, to face the fears, to be that alpha male. But then when the praise and the accolades and the success and the celebration from the victory comes, they're the first people to look out the window instead of the mirror and say, oh, look at me and everything I did. It's look at my incredible team and oh, I'm so blessed to be working with these people. It's actually one of the things that I also love about working with you guys is I think it's also a lot of the reason why we've had success is that I believe that you guys have all reached that level of leadership on your own in your own pursuits of building businesses before here, and it has allowed this to work. That at the end of the day, as the business continues to grow and have success, we're quick to give the credit to others or the other guys than to take that. And so part of that making you this super alpha, I think is having that strength to be the leader, to be the one responsible, but then quick to give up the credit and to be humble, I think is such an important trait.
You're not going to get a lot of buy-in when you hold yourself up on a pedestal. You need to be relatable and have vulnerability, but also, like take into account all the different factors that has brought into your success, and that's everybody around you, and to be able to acknowledge that is a practice. And I do. Go ahead.
It also protects you from not being killed, like Sal alluded to with the
exactly.
They talked
mutiny,
about all the apes together in a group, and the one who's established himself as the alpha, and if he's not liked by all the rest, then the minute he turns his back, they're looking to overthrow it.
Yeah.
That is so much of real life like that too. I mean, you may be this in this leadership position and think that you're so respected, but if you're not liked, and a lot of that comes from being humble. If you're not liked, people will be real quick to throw you under the bus when you're not there. Whereas if you're this incredible leader, you've taken us to all these places of success, but you're quick to give up, all the accolades.
They got your back.
They got your back, and they don't
That's
mind.
it.
They don't mind following you whatsoever, and they're not looking to overthrow you. But if you're looking for the praise and the accolades and want all the credit for the success all the time, then be careful, because they're going to be looking to overthrow you all the time.
Right, and the learn to follow part is very important, because here's what I mean by that. Right, you could be in a leadership position. You could have employees that you're teaching, right? Let's say you're a head trainer and you're the best trainer because you're the head trainer, and you're teaching them all how to be great trainers. And maybe you have a trainer that works for you that is exceptional at communicating, but you fail to see it because they work for you. So you're not open enough or humble enough to follow them with something that you could learn from. I have learned so much stuff from people that have been worked for me. That if I didn't learn to do this, man, I wouldn't be nowhere near where I am today. But this person doesn't have to be. You don't have to follow them in everything, but there's things you can learn from everybody. And if you're not humble and think you're better than everybody or you're great, you're not going to be open to learning. That maybe this person's better at me than I am at financial health, or wow, that person is an exceptional father, even though they're I hired them to work my front desk. I'm going to follow them in that regard and learn from them. This is a very important attribute, by the way, of really good leaders, is that they will have people under them, and depending on the circumstances, will step back and let that person lead, because that's what the smart thing is to do. Now, the last one I think is probably the most important, and I think it's what defines a man, which is to be a good father, to be a good husband, and to be a good friend. I think these are probably some of the most important things that you can do in life, and they're probably also the most challenging. Being a good father, for example, sometimes means your kids don't like you. Oftentimes it means you have to say no. Oftentimes it means you have to do the thing that isn't cool. All my friends are doing this. Sorry, son. Sorry, honey, you can't do this, because I know everybody is, but here's the deal. Like, being a good father requires the bravery. It requires the consistency. It requires those principles that we were talking about, and it's one of the hardest. And you have to grow up in order to do this. You know, being a dad, what does that mean? It means you can't go out with your buddies whenever you want. Sometimes, right? It means you can't be a kid and take your money and spend it on stupid shit because maybe you need to save it for your kid's college education, or to have a safety net because now you're taking care of other people. Like, being a good dad is a responsibility. Very rewarding though, if you're willing to take it on.
It's a direct reflection of your actions too. This is not what you say as a father and a husband and a friend, but it's what you do. I think that's so important. You could say all the things that you think are the right things to say as a father or as a husband, but it's what you do that will impact those people. And when I think, the father thing resonates the most with me right now because I'm obviously a new father, and I think about this all the time, that I could have all these plans of the things that I want to say and introduce my son into, but the thing that's going to impact him on the type of man that he's going to be more than anything else are the things that I do.
Totally. As
a father, the things that he sees that he will either emulate or rebuke because he doesn't want anything to be nothing like it. And so there's huge responsibility that comes with your actions in these positions, more so than there is what you say in this position. It's about what you do, because that's really what's going to reflect what kind of child that he's going to grow up, man that he's going to grow up to be later on in his life.
Totally. I think that, of course, being a good husband is also extremely important. You want to provide you want to be a stable, solid partner, and you want to allow your partner to be who they are, but you also want to be that solid rock. Now, I know this sounds like traditional or whatever, and of course there's individual variances and people are different when you go down to the individual, but generally speaking, you want to have a certain level of stoicism where, stuff's happening, things are, anxious or whatever, but you want to be the solid, calm one in the storm. You want to provide that solid base for your family when things are happening. And that's part of being a good husband. When you look at what wives and women list as their top, important attributes of the men they want to be with, and again, it's different from person to person. I get that. So before you try to flame me with, everybody, I get that. But generally speaking, one of the number one things is security. I want a partner that provides me with a sense of security. What does that come from? Consistency. That means you're consistent. Like, I know you're stable, you're solid, and you're consistent in the stuff that you say and the stuff that you do and how you react. And that's a great attribute to have, as, in my opinion, as a husband.
Yeah, and it goes back to all the other characteristics we listed earlier, and those all come into play, whether or not you're a good father, you're a good husband, you're a good friend. All your relationships are based around a lot of the code that you've sort of set and the integrity that you have in implementing all those things. And so it is a direct reflection, and nothing's more direct than seeing your kids behave exactly like how you act.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go. That's how Mind Pump defines being an alpha male, huh?
There it is. Look, if you like our information, you got to head over to mindpumpfree.com and check out all of our free guides on everything from building muscle to burning body fat, improving your fitness and health, even becoming a better personal trainer. It's mindpumpfree.com. You can also find all of us on Instagram. So you can find Justin at mindpumpjustin, me at mindpumpsal, and Adam at mindpumpadam.